Hello, welcome to the PE and Sport Department here at St Anthony's and St Aidan's Catholic Sixth Form. My name's Mrs Rodham and I'm here to go through a taster session which is all about BTEC National Extended Certificate in Sport, which is available for you to study at post 16. In terms of what you'll study, the course is broken up into two distinct years. In Year 1, in Year 12, you'll study Unit 1, Anatomy and Physiology, and in this unit you'll learn about the structure and the function of 5 key body systems, their responses to exercise and adaptations to training. At the end of Year 12, or the May in Year 12, you'll have an external exam to assess your knowledge and understanding. Unit 7 is the other unit that you'll study in Year 12, and with this unit, it is practical. So you're going to have the opportunity to improve your knowledge and practical ability in a selection of individual and team sports, focusing on the application of skills, techniques, and tactics. The rules and regulations of selected sports are also investigated, and this will be assessed via several assignments during the course of Year 12. At the end of Year 12, you will have achieved Level 3 National Certificate in Sport, which is the equivalent to and carries the same UCAS points as half an A-level. In Year 13, so in Year 2, you'll continue to work towards achieving the Extended National Certificate, which is the equivalent to and carries the same UCAS points as one A-level. In Year 2, you will study Unit 2, Fitness, Training and Programming for Health, Sport and Wellbeing. In this unit, you'll explore the process for screening clients and assessing their lifestyle and nutritional intake. From this information, you'll make judgments on a specific individual's current lifestyle and then suggest modifications to help them improve their fitness, their health and their overall well-being. This is assessed by an external exam in the January and possibly the June of Year 13. You get your first attempt in the January of Year 13 and a second attempt, if it's required, in the June of Year 13. In the weeks leading up to these exams, you'll receive a case study and you will be given plenty of time to prepare for the exam. Unit 3 is the other unit that you'll study in Year 13, which is Professional Development in the Sports Industry. Here, you'll explore the knowledge and skills required for different career pathways in the sports industry, and you will produce a personal skills audit, a career action plan, and also participate in a practical interview. This unit is fantastic in terms of preparing you for UCAS and preparing you for future interviews within your life. It's assessed via several internal assignments throughout the course of Year 13. So for this taster session, I've picked Unit 1, Anatomy and Physiology, which in Year 12 is the external exam unit. In this unit, you will explore how the skeletal, muscular, respiratory and cardiovascular systems function, and you'll explore the fundamentals of energy systems. In order to appreciate each of these systems' functions, you'll explore the structure of each system, as well as additional factors which affect sport and exercise performance. The anatomy and physiology of each body system and their processes are very different, but they work together to produce movement. So by completing this unit, you'll gain a full appreciation of how the body is able to take part in sport and exercise through understanding the interrelationships between these 5 body systems. If you'd like to click on the link at the bottom of the page, it takes you to the specification, the most up-to-date specification, and there you can view the content of what you'll study in Unit 1 and the other units in more detail. So what I'd like to do for the remainder of the taster session is actually give you a go at some of the activities that you'll be doing in Year 12 for this unit, and to look at some of the content for each body system. So the first body system is the skeletal system, And learning aim A1 is to do with the structure of the skeletal system. So you need to be able to label the bones on the skeleton that you can see here and look at the different regions of the vertebral column. So you might already know some of the names of some of the bones, or you might need to do some research. If you need to do some research, I would try Google Images for diagrams of the skeletal system, diagrams of the skeleton labelled, that kind of thing. But see how many you can get from your own knowledge so far. This table might help you to label the bones because it has all of the major bones that are required and that are specific to your specification. So here you go. Here are the answers to that task. How many out of 20 did you manage? The vertebral column is labelled as itself here. On the next slide, it's labelled with the 5 regions. So really, you could have a mark out of 25 in total. So to put this into context, the type of exam question that you could expect to come up is to see a part of the skeleton that you'll need to be able to identify and then to be able to identify the bones. So have a little go at this question here. Can you identify which part of the body this is in first, so then you're able to identify the right bones? Hopefully you were able to correctly identify the femur, the tibia and the fibula, and also get the spellings of those correctly, because the tibia, if you were to name that tibula, you'd be marked wrong. Likewise, the fibula, if you were to get that incorrect and name it the fibia, you'd get marked incorrect. So the spellings are really, really important. Also, hopefully you were able to identify that this was the leg and not the arm, even though it looks quite similar. And the ball and socket joint at the top there could have been the shoulder. However, if you look just above the arrow that's pointing from B, there's a little circle. That little circle would be the patella bone. So because we can see that there's an extra bone here on this example, we know that this is the leg and hopefully can label it accordingly and not get it mixed up with the arm. So that's just something to look out for in future. Learning aim B is all about the muscular system. And in your body, your muscles make up 40% of your total body weight. There are 3 types of muscle that we focus on: skeletal, cardiac and smooth. Skeletal muscle is attached to the skeleton and provides movement. Cardiac muscle is found only in the heart and helps the heart to pump the blood around the body. And smooth muscle is found within your digestive system and within your blood vessels to help with transport. In terms of what you need to know about the muscular system, you need to be able to identify the type of muscle. You need to be able to describe the characteristics, so what makes it unique, what makes it different, and you also need to be able to explain and describe the functions of each muscle type. So what is its job? What does it do? The next few screens or next few slides should help you to fill in this table. So you've got 3 columns to fill in. Can you identify the muscle type? Can you give several characteristics? And can you give several functions using the information on the next 3 slides? So here are some typical questions that you can expect in terms of identifying and characterising the different types of muscles. Have a go. Learning aim C covers the respiratory system, and in particular, learning aim C2 looks at the mechanics of breathing. What we need to know is how breathing is achieved by making your chest cavity or your thoracic cavity larger or smaller. And when you make it larger or smaller, that results in a pressure change inside the lungs. If something has a larger space, the pressure of the air in the lungs is lower and therefore air moves in. If something has a smaller space, the pressure within the lungs is higher and therefore air is forced out. So for the mechanics of breathing, we need to know what happens within the respiratory system to the key structures. So what I'd like you to do here is to use the diagrams that are on your screen and the statement bank or the phrase bank at the bottom right of the screen to describe the process of the mechanics of breathing. What happens during inspiration and what happens during expiration. You may find it useful to look for videos on YouTube for the mechanics of breathing to help you to understand what is happening here. Here are your answers for learner name C for inspiration. In terms of the order of which the information is presented here, as long as you have all of the information, it doesn't actually matter where in the process you put this information. So for example, during inspiration, the external intercostal muscles contract, which pulls the rib cage upwards and outwards. The diaphragm also contracts, so it flattens. The thoracic cavity, therefore, increases in size, and that makes the pressure inside the lungs drop. Therefore, air moves into the lungs. You can say that the other way around. During inspiration, air moves into the lungs because the pressure inside the lungs drops due to an increase in size of the thoracic cavity. This is caused by the diaphragm contraction and flattening, and the external intercostal muscles contracting and pulling the rib cage upwards and outwards. So the order doesn't matter too much as long as the information there is correct.
Here's a typical exam question for you to have a go at. This question is focused on expiration at rest. So don't mention anything about inspiration in your answer because that will be irrelevant to the question and it won't be on the mark scheme. So can you get 4 marks for describing how breathing works, expiration works at rest? So this question was about expiration. So remember I said to be careful and not talk about inspiration because that would be irrelevant to this mark scheme. So you can see on here that everything is related to expiration, each mark. The key terms that are underlined are things that the examiner is particularly looking for and that you make sure you say. So you've got to identify the external intercostal muscles, and you've got to identify that the thoracic cavity moves downwards and inwards.
Learner name D is all about the cardiovascular system. In terms of the cardiac cycle, you have 4 key structures within the heart that make up one whole heartbeat. Starting with the sinoatrial node, then moving to the atrioventricular node, then moving to the bundle of His, and then to the Purkinje fibers. What I would like you to do is to click on the link to watch the video about the cardiac cycle and make some notes to extend your understanding of what happens and what each particular structure is involved in doing. The link will only work on the PDF handout, not in the video state. So please use the PDF handout to click onto the link to watch the video Alternatively, type the link exactly as it is into YouTube. So from the video, you might have picked up some of this important information about the sinoatrial node. The sinoatrial node is the heart's pacemaker. The heart is myogenic, which means that it sets its own rhythm. And the SAN, or the SA node, is located in the wall of the right atrium, the top right-hand side of the heart. Its job is to send a nerve impulse, which then causes a wave of contraction and causes the walls of the atria, both right and left, to contract. Next, we have the atrioventricular node. This is located near the septum, which is the wall of the heart that divides the heart into its left and right side. The atrioventricular node, or the AV node, is activated from the impulse from the sinoatrial node. It picks up that impulse because the atria are contracting and it feels that impulse. It's got a special job to slow down the signal that it receives from the SA node to make sure that the atria can contract before the ventricles. So it means that the atria can then force all of the blood that they have contained in them through to the ventricles so that the ventricles can fill up fully before they contract. The AV node is then responsible for sending an impulse towards the ventricles so that they can contract to push blood out of the body. The bundle of His is a very special muscle within inside the heart, and it transports the impulse from the AV node into the septum, into the wall dividing the left and right sides of the ventricles. It passes that impulse down through the septum and into the Purkinje fibers. It picks up the impulse from the AV node and sends it down through the septum into the Purkinje fibers. The Purkinje fibers then pick up the impulse from the bundle of His, and because these are located across all of the walls of the ventricles, they can spread the impulse that they receive through the ventricles at different intervals, and what this does is it can cause the blood to be pushed out of the ventricles to either the muscles that are working, that require oxygenated blood, or to the lungs, where we may have carbon dioxide filled blood that we need to expire. It's very common for a question on D3, the nervous control of the cardiac cycle, to ask you to explain the role of one of the key structures or one of the key systems. So they may have chose the sinoatrial node, the atrioventricular node, they might choose the bundle of His, the Purkinje fibers. They might ask you to describe the role or explain the role of the sympathetic nervous system or the parasympathetic nervous system. This question's chosen the atrioventricular node, so for 3 marks, can you explain its role? Final learning aim covers energy systems, and in terms of energy systems, we have to understand the fundamentals of energy production. It's important to realise that energy can't be created or destroyed. All that happens is it changes its form. So in the food we eat, in the form of carbohydrates and fats and proteins to a certain extent, they contain energy. They're our fuel source. When we eat that food, our body digests it and we take out the energy and break it down into a usable form. That usable form of energy is called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And this is how we get energy for the movement that we do in sport. Activities that require short bursts of effort, such as sprinting and jumping, require large amounts of energy to be produced over a short period of time. So a large amount of ATP is required over a very short period of time. In contrast, marathon running or long distance cycling or rowing or swimming requires continued energy production over a long period of time, but at a slower rate. And what can happen with the adenosine triphosphate is that it can be recreated or resynthesized. What we need to know about the energy systems is how they can function in terms of with oxygen, therefore aerobically, or without oxygen, anaerobically. It tends to be that movements that require sudden bursts of effort and are really powerful and ballistic and really fast and intense don't require any oxygen, and therefore they are classed as anaerobic. Activities that are more endurance based or prolonged or take place over a really long period of time are aerobic and do require oxygen. What I'd like you to do is have a think about all the different sports and all the different physical activities and all the different events within those sports and activities. And can you distinguish between aerobic activities, so those that are prolonged and are continuous over a long period of time, so therefore their energy production is with oxygen? And can you distinguish those that are anaerobic, so movements that require a real sudden burst of high intensity energy, so therefore would be anaerobic? Okay, so now for a little bit of fun. It's time to test your knowledge. What have you taken in from this taster session? I have a little Kahoot quiz for you to have a go about. There are 10 questions. Some are true or false, some are multiple choice. Use this link to take you to your quiz. This link will only work from the PDF document, so make sure you've got that up in front of you. And when you play the quiz, make sure you do it in classic mode. Good luck!